Did you know that Bleach's creator Kubo and One Piece's creator Eiichiro Oda have had an ongoing beef that has lasted 3 decades? The now manga legends both came up in the extremely competitive and notoriously brutal world of the late 1990s, early 2000s manga industry, where they both would go from struggling, aspiring manga artists to the creators of 2 of the most popular and influential series of all time. But on their road to the top, Kubo and Oda would begin to see each other as rivals and eventually enemies, with one of the creators even publicly admitting they hate the other. On today's Creator Deep Dive, I'll be explaining the insane drama between 2 of Japan's biggest mangakas, as well as comparing their careers and accomplishments. So the first thing that is important to establish is that Oda and Kubo are around the same age and share similar-ish origin stories. They both became addicted to anime and manga extremely young, which led to them becoming obsessed with drawing and eventually having aspirations of becoming professional manga artists. In Kubo's case, he was inspired by the series Saint Seiya, GGG no Kotaro, and 2 manga by the late great Akira Toriyama, Dr. Slump, and Dragon Ball. When it comes to Oda, he was inspired by the mangas The Monster Kid, Koche Kame, Kinnikuman, and an anime called Vicky the Viking. But also, just like his future rival, Oda was also a massive fan of Dragon Ball. Now, I'm not going to dive too deep into Oda and Kubo's lives pre-Shueisha, the manga publisher both creators would eventually work for, because I've already released individual documentaries on both of them, detailing their overall lives, careers, and analyzing all of their works. And so, in order to not be redundant to the return viewers of the channel, I would like to fast forward to the point that's relevant to the topic of this video, which is when Kubo and Oda began submitting their work into manga competitions. For Kubo, it all started when he was in high school and discovered that manga was a great way for him to combine his love for his various interests, drawing, poetry, and fashion. This epiphany led Kubo to working up the nerve to tell his teacher about his professional manga creator dream, in order to learn what exactly the process to achieving it even entailed. Kubo expected his teacher to just crush these creative ambitions, but instead, their conversation gave him the confidence and information to submit a manga he had been working on called Fire in the Sky into a manga competition held by Shueisha. Though Kubo was nervous, this was a necessary first step toward his dream career. And excitingly, Shueisha would actually think Kubo's manga had some potential, and they would shortlist Fire in the Sky to a finalist in their prestigious Hop Step Award. This award is given to young, up-and-coming manga artists who the industry and manga fans should keep their eyes on. Many winners of this award have gone on to be incredibly successful and influential mangakas. But most importantly, winning it almost guarantees you'll have a chance to officially work with Shueisha in the future. Shueisha is by far the most successful manga publisher ever. Just some of the manga that fall under their umbrella include Dragon Ball, Death Note, Hunter x Hunter, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and eventually all 3 of the big 3. And that just covers their weekly Shonen Jump magazine. The company has several magazines that target different demographics, as well as film and game publishing departments. Basically, this award has the power to fast track you to a chance at manga artist stardom. But unfortunately for Kubo, shortcuts to success wasn't what destiny had in store for him. Therefore, he would lose without placing. This was especially crushing for Kubo because in order to get his manga skills to their current level, he had isolated himself from his friends and family, spending all of his time drawing or researching manga. And now he was unsure if all that sacrifice was worthwhile. Unbeknownst to Kubo though, a manga editor that worked for Shueisha named Takanori Asada had gotten a hold of Kubo's manga and thought that though Kubo's skills needed some refinement, he had a lot of potential. Asada would call Kubo and tell him not to give up and to try again at winning the award in the future. But Kubo was still feeling a little discouraged, and so he told Asada no, at least for now, because Kubo actually never stopped working on his manga skills, which will be relevant it again to the story in a few minutes. For now, let's switch gears and take a look at how vastly different the beginning of Oda's manga career was going around this same time. After a series of events I covered in my The Dark Rise of One Piece video, by the time Oda was in high school, he was so obsessed with drawing manga, he was going as far as quitting all the school clubs and teams he was a part of, and even attempting to not sleep at night so he had more hours in his day to improve his manga creating skills. This insane level of dedication made it to where by the time Oda discovered a manga competition called the Tezuka Award, he was properly prepared. The Tezuka Award is a semi-annual award also given out by Shueisha, but this competition rewards talented new manga artists who specialize in storytelling. It's named after the godfather of manga, Osamu Tezuka, who is renowned as one of the greatest storytellers of all time and a pioneer of the medium. Oda would submit a manga he had been working on for 4 months called Wanted, a Western themed action comedy. Oda would submit his work under a pseudonym, and at just 17 years old, the unknown artist would take home second place and receive a 500,000 yen prize. After his win, Oda would go on to be interviewed by several established outlets, and his work would even be published in Shueisha's Mazase Mangaka magazine. Oda was basically being treated like a manga prodigy, and to be honest, he kinda was one. I've read every single manga Oda put out in chronological order for my Every Manga by Eiichiro Oda Explained video, and it was scary how good he was at such a young age. Placing in this award also earned Oda a spot in the monthly offshoot of Shueisha's flagship weekly magazine, in which Oda would premiere his next one-shot, God's Gift for the Future. With these achievements, even though Oda was nowhere near a professional mangaka, his name was starting to spread through the industry as the budding artist to pay attention to. Something else you should know is that from Oda to Kubo, or really any aspiring manga artist, especially those who create shonen manga, the ultimate goal is to get serialized in a weekly magazine. It's the best way to get the most eyes on your work and create a sustainable career in the field. Therefore, the ambitious Oda would decide to shoot his shot at getting noticed by the #1 weekly manga magazine, Weekly Shonen Jump, by entering their aforementioned competition, the Hop Step Award. But unlike with Kubo, Oda, who was seemingly blessed by fate, would take home first place his very first time entering with his manga Ikiyako. And so at this point, Oda's name was ringing off so much that he decided to drop out of university and move 711 miles from Kumamoto, Japan to Tokyo, Japan to chase his dream full time. And thanks to his back-to-back competition wins and published works, his resume was high-key stacked. So Oda was able to land a job as a manga artist assistant at Shonen Jump. Now, this does not mean that things were easy for Oda from here on out. The manga industry is notoriously brutal and competitive. That being said, Oda entering the manga industry at such a young age would indirectly be revealed as one of the precipices of the beef. And so you understand how, it's time to dive into the Shonen Jump popularity poll incident. So remember how after Kubo had lost the Hopstep Award, he was contacted by Osada about entering the competition again, but turned it down? This was around 1995. A year later, Osada reached out again to see if Kubo had been working on anything he might want to submit to the up-and-coming Hopstep competition. And as it would turn out, this time the answer was yes. Kubo had been cooking up a dark sci-fi manga called Ultra Unholy Hearted Machine. He had put everything he has into this manga. It had an interesting storyline and great characters, all wrapped up with super immersive world building. With this banger locked and loaded, Kubo decided to blow his load by entering Ultra Unholy into 1996's Hopstep Award. But mind-blowingly to me, Kubo would lose the competition again. I read this one-shot for my Kubo documentary, and I thought it was awesome. Honestly, I think it felt even ahead of its time. It would fit even better into the modern manga market than it did back then, which might have been Kubo's whole problem. I'll explain how in the Bleach versus One Piece segment coming up. For now, just know that even though Kubo didn't place in the competition, Shonen Jump did decide that Ultra Unholy Hearted Machine had enough possible potential that they would still publish it as a one-shot in their magazine to see how fans reacted to it. This was a massive deal for two reasons. Number one, this was Kubo's first published manga, so he now could officially add published manga artist to his resume. And two, based on the reception from Shonen Jump's readers, his one-shot could get picked up for weekly serialization, changing his life forever. So that you understand how that could happen, let me explain how Shonen Jump picks the series they publish in their magazines. Shonen Jump runs off this popularity style selection process. Let's say in a given issue, they publish a couple of new one-shot stories from either established or aspiring mangakas. These one-shots are sprinkled throughout the magazine between already popular series. At the end of the magazine, readers then get to vote in a poll that ranks all the manga they just read. After this, Shonen Jump's higher-ups review the results and they take this feedback very serious. If one or two of the new one-shot stories get a lot of the votes, they'll allow the manga artists behind the work to get a chance at serialization after their pilot passes through the editorial process. Now, this poll is a double-edged sword and can result in already established mangas that happen to lose popularity even momentarily getting axed. Like I said, the manga industry is cutthroat. This process often fosters heated competition and or disdain between Shonen Jump's artists. But Kubo wasn't worried because he knew he had something special. If the judges couldn't see his talent, manga fans would. However, Ultra Unholy would fall just one placement short in the rankings that would have got him serialized. And just what was this god tier manga that somehow defeated Kubo's? Well, it was called Romance Dawn, a pirate themed manga by a promising up and coming manga artist named Eiichiro Oda. That's right, through some kind of cruel joke, even though Oda had gotten a couple years head start in the industry, he had bounced around from assisting various mangakas until landing a job as an assistant to the world famous but controversial manga artist Watsuki, who Oda says was the first boss he had that believed in him and even added one of the characters Oda designed into his insanely popular manga Rurouni Kenshin. Oda's time with Watsuki is what finally gave him the confidence to take a shot at getting his long-time idea for a manga serialized. The awesome and sorta wacky adventures of a rubbery pirate named Monkey D. Luffy. That's right, Romance Dawn was the pilot for what would eventually become One Piece. This is why I think the gods of fate just be messing around with Kubo, because even though Ultra Unholy was good, it's not even what Kubo's best work would eventually be. So this wasn't the same thing as the big three debates, where all the works we compare are most likely the legendary mangaka's maximum opuses. This was what would be Kubo's maybe fourth best manga versus the eventual highest selling manga of all time. After this, Oda would rework some of his ideas for Romance Dawn, which would then have its official premiere around a year later under the name One Piece. The pirate manga was an instant smash hit, thrusting Oda into manga celebrity status. As for Kubo, he would fluctuate between releasing failed and semi-successful one-shots through Shonen Jump before finally getting serialized with his manga Zombie Powder in 1999. Unfortunately though, this series would run for a short 27 chapters before getting canceled. It wouldn't be to the year 2001 that Kubo would hit it big after he released a manga called Bleach, a story about a cranky but kind-hearted teenager named Ichigo Kurosaki, who obtains the powers of a Soul Reaper and then through a series of events has to defend humans, rescue his friends, and fight evil spirits. As we all know, Bleach would become a massive success and be ranked alongside the biggest manga and anime of the early 2000s. Though Kubo was incredibly grateful for the support of his new fans, he still blamed Oda for the delay in his career taking off. Basically, there was a 4 to 5 year gap between Oda defeating Kubo and blowing up and Kubo making it big with Bleach. Some fans believe that Kubo Kubo and Oda actually hate each other, and some believe it's more of a friendly feud. I've investigated both sides of the argument and have found evidence that supports both claims. That's why in this next segment, I'm going to break down Kubo and Oda's own statements about their beef, as well as real quotes from people that know them personally, so we can get to the truth once and for all. Starting with the I hate Oda incident. In 2017, Kubo appeared on TBS radio to talk about his career and Bleach. During the interview, Kubo went in depth about the struggles he faced during the start of his career. This discussion led to Kubo admitting that he had had some bitter run-ins with his fellow manga artist Eiichiro Oda throughout the 1990s. Kubo explained how his work had debuted under Oda's work in the reader survey we mentioned earlier, and that, quote, "Since then, I've hated Oda." The interviewer replied to Kubo's sudden, astonishing confession with a laugh, saying, quote, "You are a person who says things surprisingly clearly." I think what the interviewer meant by this was, in Japan, whether Kubo was joking or being serious, it's generally frowned upon to speak negatively about any peer or really any person publicly. Even non-famous people in Japan are polite to people they dislike in public. Even though it is a cultural thing, it does make it hard for people to know how others really feel about them. And even if they mean well, I could see this being bad for people's mental health. So I like it when rebellious popular figures like Kubo break social norms and to show it's okay to speak your truth. Obviously, this interview would go viral both on the internet and amongst the manga community, to the point that Oda himself would reply in a, let's say, interesting way. But before we get to Oda's reply, there are a couple other parts of Kubo's interview that I feel are important because I think it adds context to why Kubo sounds like he always has a chip on his shoulder. The first thing is that Kubo felt like he was not given a fair shot in the competition because Shonen Jump had a habit of favoring veteran staff over rookie artists. This is relevant to their situation because, as we mentioned, by the time Kubo and Oda went head to head, Oda had been a Shonen Jump employee for a couple of years, and Kubo was just getting on. So when it came to things like whose work was placed in the beginning of the magazine and whose was placed in the back and got less eyeballs on it or had readers with reading fatigue, Kubo felt he got the short end of the stick. Now this next example is much more extreme. Around the time of Kubo's career debut, the then editor-in-chief over Shonen Jump was a man named Kazuhiko Torishima. He was Kubo's boss's boss's boss. Torishima has a lot of clout in the manga industry. Not only was he the main editor of the Dragon Ball manga, but he was also responsible for personally discovering Akira Toriyama and helping him perfect the early concepts for Dr. Slump and Dragon Ball, which, if you remember, was two of Kubo's main manga inspirations, which makes this next part even more messed up. One day during Kubo's early career, he got a call from Torishima, who was demanding that he get to Shonen Jump's headquarters in Tokyo immediately. Torishima had gotten a hold of some of Kubo's work, and let's just say he wasn't a fan. When Kubo arrived at the headquarters, he was told to wait in a room quietly, and then suddenly Torishima would bust open the door and began berating Kubo with insults before he even made it to the table, screaming that Kubo's mangas were terrible. Torishima would then take out the first volumes of Dragon Ball and Fist of the North Star and slam them on the table, yelling, quote, "Your manga is not good. Go home and read these so you can become a better mangaka." Kubo said he remembers thinking, "This bastard," but he had to sit there and take it. This encounter left Kubo feeling resentful toward Torishima, and is one of the many reasons he had such a disdain for how the manga manga industry was ran. Now, this all happened prior to Kubo and Oda's popularity poll incident, so by the time that happened, he already didn't like the politics of the manga industry. In the time between the Torishima incident and the popularity poll incident, Kubo was submitting mangas back to back, but they kept getting rejected. And then when he finally gets a chance for one of his works to be greenlit for a one-shot, he loses to Oda, another manga artist his own age. Let me tell you why that matters. So after Oda wins, he releases One Piece and blows up. And then those same editors that were demanding Kubo make a manga like Dragon Ball started telling him to now make manga like One Piece. I would have lost my mind. This had to be infuriating and definitely added to his disdain for Oda. Even though these things were not Oda's fault personally, I mean, we learned from my Oda video that he faced his own troubles getting One Piece pushed through, but Kubo knows none of that, so I understand why he feels so jaded. It's one thing to be asked to copy the legends, but to be asked to copy a peer and a rival? Man. Of course, Kubo being Kubo would say hell no, and decided whether he becomes a successful manga creator or not, he will always do things his own way. And though he became known as like a rebel of the manga industry, this would turn out to be the right choice, as you're about to see. Alright, we've officially arrived at Oda's methodical response to Kubo's TBS radio interview. Fast forward to 2021 during the 20th anniversary of Bleach Expo, where Oda would do an interview in which he would address the rumors of the two creators' feud. Quote, years ago, Kubo publicly announced on the radio, I hate Oda. You want to know if I have a grudge against Kubo? Yeah, I do. That said, his statement didn't sound particularly rude to me. Oda would elaborate, saying despite Kubo's audacity to make such a statement publicly, he doesn't dislike him. Oda said he remembers that him and Kubo were almost the same age during their manga debuts. And he remembers reading Kubo's first manga and feeling like, wow, this new mangaka is good at drawing and has some good ideas as well. Even though Kubo was new to the industry, Oda felt the elegance of Kubo's art style told anyone that read his work that he was a pretty confident guy. Oda went on to say that despite Kubo's audacity to make his trash talk public, he admitted that Kubo's fearless spirit reminds him of something that Monkey D. Luffy would do. I picture that time that Luffy was cooking Big Mom on that transponder snail, but I think Oda just means they both have a rebellious spirit by nature. Oda would wrap up his comments about Kubo saying, quote, now that he mentioned me that way, I announce with 100% confidence that someone like Kubo is a competitive, super hard worker, and that he bets Kubo is feeling embarrassed because Oda mixed in some kind words about him, ending his speech telling Kubo the two should go out for a drink together in the near future. Oh, by the way, Oda also entered a drawing of Ichigo in One Piece's art style into the expo. I'm sure Kubo either loved or hated this. From here on out, start deciding whose side you're on, and if you think Oda was being nice for real or being petty / facetious in his Q&A. Comment your thoughts below because I'm really interested to hear what you think, especially with some of the shocking quotes coming up. When Oda's interview first came out, some fans felt like it was proof that the beef was friendly, but honestly, I found at least a little pettiness in Oda's words, and I think his reply could have been a masterful 5D chess gambit by Oda to win over manga fans with the kill your rival with kindness method, which on the surface worked. After the expo, there were a lot of articles written with titles like One Piece creator Oda killed Bleach creator with kindness. But don't forget, fans also said that Kubo was joking as well. However, during my research phase for this video, I found some new evidence I've never seen before that might prove otherwise. I discovered an old anime blog discussing some tweets from Greg Werner, an employee of V-Jump, Shueisha, and Toei Animation as the official One Piece columnist. Greg's tweets were in response to fans claiming that Kubo's I hate Oda statement was said in jest. During his tweeting spree, Greg reveals that not only did Kubo really begin hating Oda after Oda's one-shot beat Kubo's in 1996, but that Kubo still hates Oda to this day, claiming to have personally witnessed Kubo's disdain for Oda firsthand in person. Greg said he doesn't want to go too much into details sales and expose people's private conversations to the public. However, since Kubo went public with his feelings in the TBS radio interview, he thought it was okay to reveal what he personally knew Kubo's true feelings to be about the situation. At the end of the day, both Oda and Kubo have created truly goated series. But just for fun, let's wrap up this video with some facts and stats comparing them. And make sure to comment and let us know in your opinion which series and or creator do you personally like better, or at least who you feel the winner of the rivalry is. First, manga sales and overall popularity. There isn't anyone who could deny that One Piece dominates all when it comes to raw popularity, especially in terms of manga sales. But not only is One Piece the most popular manga series of all time, but it's also one of the most popular media franchises in general, being valued at over $20 billion. This includes its anime adaptation, film releases, and live action series that have all broken records. With that being said though, I would argue that Bleach has actually had more of a direct influence on the modern state of manga and anime than One Piece or any series from their era. A big part of my Bleach doc was how most of the younger poppin' manga artists directly cite Bleach as influencing their work. Either Kubo's world building, character designs, or him helping pioneer the relationship between fashion and anime. This includes the creators for Demon Slayer, Black Clover, My Hero Academia, and Jujutsu Kaisen, just to name a few that's credited Kubo as an inspiration by name. I think what happened to Kubo was his work was just too dark or edgy for the time period he was pitching them. Then when the people that was raised on Bleach and his other work grew up and made their own mangas, this shifted the paradigm of manga culture to a place that allowed for more mature themes to flourish among shonen fans. This would explain why when Bleach returned with the 1,000-Year Blood War anime, it broke the internet, even though the manga came out years ago, because it fit perfectly into what modern anime fans fiend for, and it did it even better than what they were used to. In fact, the 1,000-Year Blood War was voted best anime of 2022 by Mao. Though Kubo and Oda are already legends, both of them are still working creators. And so who knows what their ultimate legacies will be. I just hope before they're all said and done, they get that drink and swap stories, because I just love how their lives sound like real life anime rivals. And that would be the perfect end to the story.